All set.
Thank you. Okay, welcome to the first SWAN Circulation Advisory Group meeting of the year. And I am Crystal Vella. I am the chair of this group, and along with me is...
Hi, welcome everybody. This is Sam Deedle. I am the co-chair of this group.
So I would just like the group members to go around and just introduce themselves. Let's start with Sandra.
Hi, I'm Sandy Fayon from the Downers Grove Public Library, and I'm excited to be here. I've only been an assistant manager for about 5 months now, so I'm learning a lot.
Thanks, Sandy. Can I have Sandra Leva from...
Hi, this is Sandra Leva from ALSIP. I've been at ALSIP for the past 13 years and as manager 7.
Great, thank you. Next up, Christine from Bloomingdale.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christine. I work at Bloomingdale. I've been there for almost 11 years, and I've been the circulation manager since 2014.
Great, thank you. Victoria?
Hi, I'm Victoria from the River Forest Public Library. I've been here for 15 years and a manager for, I think, 5.
Great, thank you. Debbie?
Hi, I'm Debbie Sheehan. I'm from Indian Prairie Library. I've been head of Circ for 19 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Debbie. And is Peggy here?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Crystal. Good morning, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Peggy Tomzik. I'm the head of library services at Eisenhower Public Library, and I have been the department head for over 17 years now.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Peggy. I know Jerry's here. Jerry, would you like to say hello?
I'm going to try, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. It's a good day for the microphone. I'm Jerry Kane. I'm at Carroll Stream Public Library. I've been here for 8 years, and I've been manager of circulation for 8 years.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. Tom from... I know you're here.
Tom Webb.
Pop in. Hi.
Yeah. Hi, how's everybody doing? Tom Webb from the Manson Area Public Library District. I've been here for a little over 3.5 years as the customer service coordinator.
Great, thank you. Stephanie?
I am Stephanie at Batavia. I have been the circulation manager here for a little under 3 years.
Thank you. Lucas?
Morning. I'm Lucas McKeever, and I've been at Elmwood Park Public Library for a little over 5 years and head of a newly merged Circ and Tech department for just about a year.
Great, thank you, Lucas. And Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen at Palos Heights Library. I've been Circ manager for the past 12 years, and I've been at the library for 25 years.
Welcome. Is Karen Gerson from Homewood on the line? Okay, maybe she's just running a little late.
It looks like she's here. She might be having microphone issues. It looks like she's unmuted, but we can't hear her, so maybe she's unable to speak. Karen, if you can hear us, if your mic isn't working, feel free to enter things in the chat as well.
Thank you. Okay, so let's dive right in. I wanted to, since this is our first meeting of the year with our new advisory group, I wanted to just remind us all of a little bit how this group is shifting to have more focused goals throughout the year. We have consolidated our meeting times as well from 6 times a year down to 4. And we've also then created some clear focuses that we want to just keep in mind while we work together for this year of 2021. So just to recap, we're going to be looking at consolidation of item types and what that means for a more consistent staff and patron experience. And especially for interlibrary loaning or reciprocal borrowing transactions. And we're going to kind of dive into a little bit of that today. Not everything will be touched on in this meeting. We'll kind of, hit some basic points for a lot of these in every meeting that we go into. So we'll also at some point review messaging, billing notices and billing notices and hold notices and things like that. So really looking at the messaging that we're giving patrons and how we can make that more concise and clear. Development of and review of online training, as some of you have viewed and given me feedback on classes and documentation and training here and there. That's a continuation of that, just in a new format. And also, help with creating curriculum and what you all need in terms of what is going to be beneficial when you're training either a new employee or just giving a refresher to, long-term employees. So we're also going to look at patron management, including this kind of new digital-only world that we are learning to live in, what that kind of means for managing our accounts, our records, and, helping provide teachers and schools and help supplement those areas and build up those relationships when we can. So just wanted to start that off, make sure that we all have seen this, make sure we know what our goals are for this year and what we're looking at doing. Okay, I am now going to ask if any of the advisory group members, there are 10 currently, we will be moving to a 9-member advisory group. So in November, we will be going down 1 seat. So if any of you have any questions about these goals or these focuses, feel free to chime in or toss it in the chat if your mic is giving you some feedback. Sam, did you want to add anything? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it. And I think something we discussed, just expanding on what you said, we have 4 meetings a year, right, this year?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we have 4 goals doesn't mean we have a meeting focused on each goal. We're just going to be working on them concurrently throughout the year and getting a little deeper into each as we progress.
All right. Okay, so the first agenda topic here is the number of pieces versus circ notes. We kind of want to get an idea of what you're using. Sam's going to go into a little more detail on that, what that looks like. So Sam, you want to take it away?
Sure will. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and then I will give it back to you.
Okay.
Okay. All right, you should be seeing my web browser. It looks like that's what's displaying. So first, before I explain what I'm showing here, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with and some of you might not be, like a lot of topics that come to our attention, we had a ticket inquiring about the number of pieces field. And I chatted about it with, I'm in the BIB services department, so a lot of our topics is Circ advisory, they span multiple departments. So this is a good example of that. Because we're talking about items, but fields and item records affect circulation, of course. So we wanted to bring this to you as a group and see what you may know about these two fields and who may be using each or neither. I know some of us in this advisory group are managers of both the Circ and Tech department, so you might be extremely familiar, some others may not. So when we're talking about number of pieces, we're talking about the field that is up top under item category 4 right there. That is a field in every item record that allows you to say this item contains multiple pieces. And this kind of thing is used a lot of times for, or may be used for, books on CD, anything that is, a kit, things that have pieces in them. There is an additional record of field that does something very similar, which is the circ note, which you probably are all using to some extent. It's in the item record, not in the patron record. And you can enter in a free text note, such as this one, check contents, 2 pieces, what have you. Because it's free text, you can just type in, whereas number of pieces is, of course, only going to accept a digit. So I think some history about the difference between the two fields and how they may be used may be helpful here. When we first came up using Circe Dynex and migrated from III, and probably for a while after that, a lot of people were not using the number of pieces field, because as you'll see in a minute, I'm actually going to demonstrate the difference between the two. It requires an override in order to proceed with the checkout. So because of this, for self-checks, which we know are extremely common in your library, self-checks were not always able to input the override to bypass this message, and so it would block the checkout. So I think a lot of people weren't using it for that reason, and for a good reason. But since then, we've learned a lot about self-checks, and the SWAN IT team and your own IT perhaps have worked with vendors to automatically bypass this message, so it's not necessarily holding up the checkout process with self-check anymore. So that's the number of pieces field in a nutshell. The circ note field, like I said, it's free text, so you can enter a contents message or any message you like, and it does not hold up that self-check process. So as we know that noting the number of pieces or the contents of an item is a common need for you, we're curious who is using what, if some of you have moved to using number of pieces, if you're still using a circ note for this kind of message. But let me first demonstrate the difference between the two. Now that I've talked at you a little bit, I'm just going to go to workflows. I am in a SWS test item here, and this is actually the item in my screenshot. So you can see number of pieces I have entered as 2. You could enter this as any digit you like. And I have a circ note, check contents, 2 pieces. And as I said, free text, so you can modify this to say whatever you like. If I go to check in this item, you just grab this barcode. I'm going to go to circulation and check in. I have both the circ note and the number of pieces defined in this item record. So I'm going to see both of the messages show up. This is just for these illustrative purposes here. So this first message that pops up is pulling from that number of pieces field. And it says item has associated materials, number of pieces are 2. And as I said, note that it requires you to enter an override. It is just the general Y override, so it's nothing restricted under a circulation or technical supervisor password or anything like that, but it does require that you enter it to then override and return the item. Sorry, that was a little loud in my ear. Hopefully it didn't get really loud in your ear. And I'm just getting that item not charged message because it's not checked out. So that was the missing number of pieces, rather, field and how it can control. So you can see how it can actually block the checkout. I think when we first came up live, this was something that a lot of libraries were looking for. They wanted something that required staff to check that contents message and check it against the item before proceeding to checkout, so items weren't erroneously checked out to patrons. So that's the benefit of that field. Whereas the circulation note allows you to enter a contents message or whatever you would like in that free text field, but it appears after the item is checked out. So it's just a message and won't prohibit that checkout. So that being said, I think it's hard to information gather in meetings like this. So I think I'm going to just call each of you on the advisory group out to ask if you're familiar with this, what do you use? Since we only have 10 of us, this won't take too long. And then if any other attendees would like to mention anything, feel free. So gonna put you on the spot a little bit. Sorry about that. Sandra from ALSIP, do you know what you use?
Yes, so we actually use both.
Okay.
We use the number of pieces for our books on CDs, DVDs, anything that is in a case, basically, like audiovisual. We also use that for our nonfiction items that in case if it has 2 CDs in the book, we also use the number of pieces. The circ note, we use it more towards our library of things items, any kits that we have to specify what's inside, basically.
Sure. Yeah, more of a detailed message.
Yes. Yes, we were trying to go towards the number of pieces, but when it came to the library of things, it was harder to know what was considered a piece, or
Oh, for sure.
At the cert. But we're still trying to work things out to make sure that everything is one way instead of having 2 different systems.
Great, thank you for sharing. And do you know did you always use both, or did you move to this at a certain point?
We moved to number of pieces when we were told that we can use that through self-checkout without a block.
Perfect. Okay,
yes.
That is exactly what I was hoping to learn.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going down the list alphabetically. So next we have Christine from Bloomingdale.
So I actually had to email my cataloger because I don't 100% know the answer to this question. I know that we use number of pieces for everything. We always have.
Okay.
Like before even SWAN, like back to link days, we've always used number of pieces. I think there are some items that also have a circ note for the number of pieces, but we are moving away from that because we didn't think there was a reason to have both. Like if you're going to have an override, then why do we also need a circ note?
Yeah.
So I believe that's correct. I can confirm that once my cataloger gets back to me, but I do know 100% for sure that we use the number of pieces.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, and I should say too, if I call on you and you don't know the answer, don't worry. This is obviously not any kind of formal thing. This is just the best way to have this discussion in a digital format. So thanks, Christine. Next, we have Victoria from River Forest. I guess that's not alphabetical. Sorry about that, but they're on my list.
That's okay. We use circ notes.
Okay, so no number of pieces for you.
No, but I'm interested in running it by the tech department and seeing what they think, if we should rediscuss this with the other departments.
Great. Okay. And I want to say too, I'm not this is just, like I said, information gathering. I'm not saying one is better for the other, that you should move to one specifically. It really kind of depends on your needs, but this helps a lot. And so thank you. Moving on, I don't know if I'm in alphabetical order anymore. I'm definitely sure I'm not. So let me just keep going. Next, I have Debbie from Indian Prairie. What do you use, Debbie? And if your mic doesn't work, I can move on to somebody. No, you're fine.
Sorry about that. We use a circ note.
Okay.
We've had self-checks for almost 20 years. And so, back in the day, we just started using it. So we don't use number of pieces.
Okay, and it works just fine for you, and
it works just fine. Yep.
Yeah, hadn't seen a reason to change. That is perfectly fine. Okay, next I'm going to call on Peggy from Eisenhower.
Hi, we've always used circ notes.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I expected this would be a mixed bag, and that's what I'm hearing. So I'm glad I had a good idea of what I would hear today. Next, let's go to Jerry from Carol Stream. What do you use Jerry?
It looks
Hi.
like we use both. So
Yeah.
because our kid lover just said that the one not having something in the number of pieces just allowed the checkout on their self-checkout at the time. And this is a lot of years ago. So I think the number of pieces just says 1 in every number of pieces. And then the cert note pops up at check-in to help us verify the contents.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Moving along in my strange list. I'm sorry, did you have a question? Or had something to add? Okay. We have Tom from Madison. What are you using?
I think we use a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, primarily the circ notes, however. Recently, we've added some things like binge boxes, and that is where we've sort of moved over to number of pieces. I guess from my point of view, and I don't know if this is something that we can go back in and kind of look at and correct, and maybe this is even where you're headed, but I think kind of back in the day, people might have gone a little crazy with the circ notes here. And so we'll get the pop-up saying check pieces when the item is fairly simple and only just has the one piece that you're looking at. So
Gotcha. Yeah, cleanup is always something we're of course interested in. And so learning more about how these are used is helpful. Next, we'll go to Stephanie from Batavia.
We actually use neither. I think
Okay.
the previous fear was that with circ notes that the clerk wouldn't pay attention, scan the following item, which would then clear the pop-up and then not check out that item. I think that's the reasoning why circ notes weren't previously done, and then that fear increased with having RFID. If you have multiple items on the pad, it would, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, and the number of pieces, I don't know the backstory with that, but I think it was probably because of the self-checkout machine issue.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Next on my list, we have Lucas, Elmwood Park. What are you using?
Yeah, we also are not using either.
Neither, okay.
We just label the items physically with how many pieces they have, or if it's beyond books or something that's more non-traditional, I tend to create a sort of like cheat sheet picture of what everything is, and then also the name of it that shows up in the bib so people actually know what is missing if it's missing.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I know Karen's mic isn't working from Homewood, so she's entered in the chat. We use circ notes mostly for DVDs. Our staff has preferred to enter the very precise instructions that are possible with circ notes for pieces and all other messages. Thank you, Karen. And thank you to everyone else. Anyone who isn't a group member, do you have any questions? You can feel free to chime in. If not, we'll just move on. I want to thank you again for sharing what you do, and this helps us see. And it's really interesting, actually, that some are using neither, some are using both, and some are using one over the other. So this is great.
Yeah, Sam, it looks like Laura at Flossmore is stating that they don't use number of pieces as items are labeled with the number of CDs, for example. They use staff notes for kits and games since they have so many varied pieces of different types. Circ note and public note are used to identify the items that are behind the desk, so patrons know items are not out on the floor.
Great. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Crystal, for reading that.
Anyone else want to chime in? Or
pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody again, and I'm going to pass the sharing back to Crystal, but If you have any questions about anything we talk about, of course, always know you can enter things in the chat.
Okay. Okay, I think you can all see the agenda. Okay, so Sam and I have prepared a kind of like a little show and tell. We're going to give an overview of how to read the circulation and hold map. And I am going to show you where you can find that on the SWAN website. We have this under documentation and ILS configuration. So that's where I'm at right now. And then I went to the circulation and holds configuration. And these are exported about weekly. And Sam just throws them up here on the website for everybody, along with other things like bill reasons and things like that. So we are going to take a look at these. Okay, so I believe here I have the circ map up. Okay, and
Crystal, I'm not sure if it's me or if other people can hear her, but you may be muted.
oh
Or you're
my
just
goodness,
scrolling.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're
My
fine. And actually, I think it was the powers that be, because before we move fully on, it looks like SWAN training has typed in with SWAN configured your self-check SIP connections to allow checkout of items with number of pieces, which is exactly what I was saying. So so if you were a library that was using CircNote and you were interested in moving the number of pieces, it does work seamlessly now. So back to you, Crystal.
Oh no, great, thank you. Good thing my headset muted itself. Anyway, what I was saying was if you go onto the SWAN website and pull up the circ and hold map, this is the document that would download and you would see. This is the circulation map. It is read from the bottom up. So if you're looking specifically at your library, and I'm going to just look at ALSUP right now, you'll see there are a few main components when you're trying to read a circ or hold map. You're going to be looking at the item type, the user profile, as well in this case is the circulation rule. So circulation rules, if you don't know, this 3W 10 cent 0G 10C 0G 0R, what that translates into is the amount of time the patron can have this checked out. So in this case, 3 weeks. The fine that they will incur if they're late, which is 10 cents, and how many days you allow for grace, if any. In this case, it's 0, and if there are any renewals. In this case, 0 renewals. And this is specifically for a device, okay? So when we're looking at the map, anything that you'll be limiting or have a specific circ rule, you'll find here in this item type. So what you're seeing here on this line 26 here is the rules for ALSUP for their non-residents to check out Blu-rays and DVDs. So all of these item types here, they would be checked out for 7 days. X, 10 cents, 0 grace, 2 renewals, and the 3M is a 3 maximum charge. So you'll see they have this in here because they want to make sure that these are in going out to these patrons for a very specific amount of time, and they have a maximum amount in here. They also have something similar for their non-residents for CDs and audio materials. And for their devices, this is where you'll see, sometimes you'll have like, you'll see the double like device twice, and that's because they're pointing out here that an AMS user profile of AMS patron can check out a device for 3 weeks, 10 cents, 0 grace, 0 renewals, but any other user profile will not be able to check out this device, item type of device, unless there is an override associated. So that's kind of a quick way to look at this. If there is nothing, if they have an item that is not put in here, and maybe that's an interlibrary loan that might come through, and it is not an item type that they use and they have in their circulation map, it will automatically go to their default, which is set at 3 weeks, 10 cents, 0 grace, and 2 renewals. So, yeah, are there any questions from anyone at this point, advisory group members or non-advisory group members, just visitors today, about circ maps and how to read it? It's a lot to digest, I know. So we're just looking at a very small portion of it. So 10C or XC, that's a great question, Karen. So the reason why you'll sometimes see Roman numerals in a circulation rule is mostly because we are limited to, I believe it's 10 characters. And with that, we have to make sure we get all of the characters.
Descriptive information.
Yes. Thank you, Sam. In there. So sometimes we have to use Roman numerals instead of a number for either the fine or the maximum checkouts or anything like that. So usually the way we've been doing it has been to start off with a Roman numeral, and we're just trying to squeeze as much information as we can within that tiny little character limit we have.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another good point to bring up too, as you can even see in this screenshot that some circ rules have different, most of our circ rules have that format that Crystal explained where it follows that convention, and that's done so you can look at the circ rule and guess what it is. So that's why we attempt to be as descriptive as possible. But you'll see some old circ rules that may have been created a long time ago, like the one on line, I think it's 8, or that one too, BBS 2, which is on line 30, where it says BBS limit 1. If you see any circulation rules with the term limit in them, it means that library has defined a maximum checkout. And before we moved to this convention of putting that maximum checkout in the circulation rules so everybody could share them, we had created some library specific circulation rules. So those are being phased out, but you will still see them in the map. And if they exist in the map, like in this line in 30, look to that description column, and it should always tell you what that circ rule translates to. So in this case, it's, I think, 2 weeks. Sorry, my eyes getting
10 cents.
10 cents. Thank you.
0 grace, 2 renewals, and 6 max.
Yes, exactly.
Peggy has a question where are the RBPs and CPL patrons? Those are usually, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but at the end of the map.
Anything that is system-wide for a RBP or CPL patron. So there are some item types that CPL has requested we block from checkout for their patrons in SWAN, and you're gonna have to scroll way down. But we used to have a lot of lines in the circ map that spelled out every item type, but with an upgrade we were able to combine lines, so it's nicer that it's a condensed map, but it gets a little more confusing to scroll through. So
yeah, sorry if I'm making all of you dizzy, but
yeah, well, this illustrates pretty well. In here, if you look at that line 1502, so CPL patrons are blocked from checking out preloaded audio or video materials. So that is where a line that would say, the reason that's at the bottom is because they are blocked regardless of where they check out. So that isn't in your library specific lines. It applies to everybody. So because the circ map is read from the bottom up, that line is in the bottom.
so when a patron goes to check out something, you know, it refers back to this map and kind of looks through all of these points really quickly to see how long the patron can check something out for. So it scans the item, reads what the item is, you know, kind of matches that user profile, and then gives it a circulation rule, all in the background.
Correct.
So
but anything that,
go ahead. Go ahead.
You're fine. Anything that isn't a restriction or anything that doesn't apply across the board, like this kind of line, RBPs and CPL patrons just use your circulation rules. So you can just look to your library circulation map lines and see any line that doesn't specifically name a user profile of your own, for example, any line that says all for user profile will encompass how our RBPs and CPL patrons can check materials out. So does that answer your question, Peggy?
Yes. Okay, good. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Yes, the map is on, we upload it weekly to the SWAN website. Sorry, I don't know if I was muted when I did all this, but you'll be able to find it under documentation, ILS configuration, and the circulation and hold configuration on our SWAN website. So, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you put these up weekly, right?
Yep, we typically do them weekly. Last Friday, they typically get uploaded on Fridays, but if not weekly, bi-weekly.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right, here is a hold map. Again, it looks very similar to a circulation map and how it exports. You will see some, you know, a name, a description, a library, so who this is associated with, important things, again, item type, user profile, and permission. And this will kind of let you know who can put holds on what. So again, this map is read from the bottom up. And we do have, let me pause my screen for a second while I kind of move this up here so you guys aren't getting seasick with me. So we do have the option here to enter in if you would like something to be holdable, non-holdable to a patron. So think of this as kind of like an exceptions. So if you don't put anything in here at all, that item type would theoretically be able to be held by your patron or any patron, unless you made an exception for them and put them in this map, and then you would you would see here that something isn't holdable. So for example, let's look again at this device item type. So, and here's a descriptor. So this AMS device is holdable to an AMS patron. So you'll see here it's looking at the item type and the patron, and the permission is onlib. But up here, one line above it, this AMS device is non-holdable, and this is to this device item type is non-holdable to all patrons. So the only user profile that can put a device on hold is an AMS patron. So, and you'll see this no holds here. So there are a few other distinctions. Obviously it's going to go through your, whatever you would like on your user profile. So we also have new games here. And we can see that, new games are holdable to an AMS non-res, that user profile, along with AMS patrons, but they aren't holdable to anyone else. And that's kind of where this line goes in. So when a patron comes to that desk and goes to check out a new game, game new item type, they will, the software will look back and check on that user profile. Does it match this? Okay, then they get to place a hold on it. Or does it match this? These two are the ones that can place hold, anyone else can't. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Is there any questions, or Sam, you're...
Yeah, you already said it, but I just want to reiterate it too, because this is a question sometimes we get when we do consultations.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal said that only the lines that you see here with the item types are your exceptions, because by default think of everything as holdable. So sometimes we'll get a question, why do I have a lot of hold map lines, and why does another library have a smaller number, or vice versa? And the rule of thumb here is the number of lines you have equates to how many items you have restrictions on. So there are some libraries that actually have like 1 or 2 hold map lines. And what that just means is they let everything go out to any user. They don't really restrict anything. And then you might have the opposite, where a library has a lot of restrictions because maybe they use a lot of new item types, or they have a lot of special collections, or kits that can't go out on interlibrary loan as a general rule. So they restrict those items. So just think of it as the number of lines you see and the item types you see in this list represent the items you're restricting. And another thing we find a lot, which we're going to talk about item types in a little bit, but sometimes you'll see an item in your hold map that you don't use. And if that's the case, we could remove that line for you. So sometimes, if you have a slow day, I know those don't come across very often, especially lately. But if you are feeling like perusing your hold map and you notice an item type you don't use, it is safe to remove from the hold map, because the hold map refers to your items only, whereas the circ map is talking about anything that crosses your desk. So items that you have borrowed through interlibrary loan are going to follow your circulation rules. So it's everything that crosses your desk for the circulation map, but the hold map is only referring to items that are owned by your library. So it's a slightly different philosophy behind the maps. And Vicky says we love cleanup, and that is true.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Okay, so again, you can find this on the SWAN website under documentation, ILS configuration. And feel free to take a look at everything we have to offer here. You'll be able to see bill reasons, payment types and those circulation rules and their explanation there. So if you have any questions or you want to just look and see what somebody else's cool circ rule means and looks like, and feel free. Okay. So the advisory group, if you did not notice, we have moved to a new communication portal. We will still be putting our agendas and packets up on the website for everyone to view. You know, under the, here is like our agenda for today. That's where I'm pulling it up from, under meetings and trainings. So anything that we have open for everybody right now is here. However, there is a portal. You all should have gotten an invitation to it. This is kind of our communication board and the way that we will be working on the various projects from our focus this year. So currently we'll be adding some news things here. So, you know, if we have, you know, added something that we need you to take a look at, or, you know, we'll add like a news thing here and email you about it. We also have here a documents tab. And here is where we have kind of our goals. We have this training brainstorming folder. We have a patron management, digital and teacher card folder, messaging and notices, and item type consolidation folder. So this is where you'll find a lot of the things that we need you to work on. In this case, we have some, for lack of a better word, homework for the advisory group to take a look at and look into, along with some instructions. When necessary, we'll see, you know, you guys will have your libraries kind of mapped out here. Otherwise, we have, you know, we'll have just some either Excel sheets that you can add to, you know, and if we have any, if we add something that we need done or question about before our next meeting that we want to kind of get some feedback on, we will email you and add a news post so that you can see it. Again, there is also, what's great about this portal is we have everything in one place. We can all work together on documents and get them to each other quickly. And this also has the functionality of emailing the group. So, you know, I've sent you all a few emails already, you know, an invitation and things like that. So if you get, hopefully you've all kind of gotten your invitation. I know you had to set up a password. And so make sure you keep that. If for whatever reason you have forgotten it, next time you log in, just let me know. I will have to resend your, I will have to re-invite you to the group, and you'll have to kind of sign up again. But that's no problem. We can figure that out. Yeah. So I think, are there any questions so far on this from the group? Have you all been able to access it? Thank you, Karen. Great. Okay.
Have any of you
Wonderful.
worked with a SharePoint portal like this before? A group page, or done any document sharing in that kind of way before? No, first time. I will say just, Peggy says yes, yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag. Yes to access, no to using it, says Tom. I've used this with a number of SWAN projects so far, and as Crystal already said, the real great thing about this is you can be modifying documents at the same time. We have these goals streamlined for this year, so we're going to be giving you, nothing scary, but some homework, and so this way you can interact with the SharePoint. And you can interact with it in your web browser. You can download things directly from them, so we don't have to be sending things as much via email. And if Jerry edits something at Carol's stream and Sandra at LSEP looks at it 2 minutes later, she's going to see Jerry's updates. So, for those of you that aren't as familiar, it's nice, and hopefully you will get familiar as we navigate you through it.
Yeah, and as someone who myself was kind of like, uh-oh, how do I figure all this out? When it was new, it was very simple to learn. So it isn't that intimidating once you kind of get to acquainted with it. And of course, this is all very new, and we will be building this up, and the more you use it, the more familiar you'll be with it, and it'll just be like second nature. Yeah, so are there any questions on that new portal? It's great. We could still, email. You guys can email us. So yeah.
And if they want to email, they can just email that Circ Advisory group, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can all stay in communication with each other. Okay. Alrighty. Well, within this portal, we do have in these documents, we kind of have this homework. Yeah, Jasmina, it's just for the circulation advisory group, because will have documents and items and different things that we'll be working on throughout the year. Since our meetings are a little further apart, we anticipate that there'll be a little more hands-on work that they will do outside of our meetings. Okay, so here we go. Item type consolidation is our next point on our agenda, and I will not take your thunder, Sam.
You can
just
take
tell me
all
where to
my thunder. There's no thunder involved, maybe some lightning. So the words item type consolidation, I think a lot of you have heard multiple times. I know I've worked with some of you on the advisory group already, and so the whole deal. For some visitors in the room and some people that have not worked with me already, I'll give just a super brief recap. SWAN has been moving forward with this item type consolidation effort where we're looking at all of our item types because we have a lot, and we're looking at opportunities where we can consolidate them. And this is for a bunch of reasons. It's because it makes things simpler for staff, but it also really, in our main focus always, is it makes things simpler for patrons. You might wonder, why does it make things simpler for patrons? And that's because of when the interlibrary loan that Crystal mentioned earlier when we were going over the circulation map. So if you'll remember, any item type that you don't define circulation rules to your desk from another library might check out to your default circulation rule. We saw this with the Clarity Task Force, where they noted some confusion. If a patron is checking out a DVD from a library that uses an item type that the library that is checking it out doesn't use, it might check out for 3 weeks when typically DVDs check out for 7 days at that library. So getting everyone on the same board is just going to make things simpler, more streamlined, and more efficient for everybody. And then the added bonus is that it automatically cleans up our database. So there are a lot of reasons why we're pursuing this. And Crystal has pulled up an information packet that we've been building here. So we are handling item type consolidation consultations by a request basis. That's how we've done it up until this point. So what that means is a library hears about this as a project. They may be interested in moving forward. They might just be interested in learning more. And they sent in a ticket to us and we set up a consultation with them. And we go over some in-depth analysis of the item types they're using and identify some possible ways they could streamline and consolidate. So this information packet that Crystal's displaying goes over the project summary, kind of in more concise words, explains the rationale behind it that I just went over. And it includes 2 tables. So we're approaching this in phases. We have already completed a video and an audio phase. So that top table that you're seeing there shows which item types are new with the video in the left column and which item types those new item types are meant to, for lack of a better word, absorb. So you can see that how we've created these item types, what informed our decisions. You'll notice if you're not super familiar with this project that video is the new term, and we're moving away from terms such as Blu-ray or DVD, or for what we're calling, for lack of a better word, we're calling the, the medium or the carrier type. We're looking at stripping that out of the item type because that information is already in the bibliographic record and moving toward a more concise list. So I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I believe it goes down from 38 item types to about 6, something, maybe 9, something about where thereabouts. So that is the table that goes over the video item type, creation and mapping. And then if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see an audio map. So similarly, we've created some new audio item types that, again, very similar to video. I strip that carrier type out. And then in the right column, you'll see the existing item types that they are intended to absorb. So I don't want to go over this in too much detail because it's part of your homework, but I want to show you this information packet so you can see what we're building. This is not on the SWAN support site yet, but we hope it will be very soon. So you're getting a first peek at it. And so hopefully it will make sense to you. We appreciate any feedback. If you find something confusing, if you have questions, if you want to, have any input, we're looking, this is one of our goals for the year. So we're looking to you to evaluate your item types and be examples for the consortium and make things simpler for you and help us develop this project. So that's the information packet. So if we go back to, perfect, okay. So in that item type consolidation folder that Crystal already pulled up, you'll find an item type review homework. We warned you that there would be homework and we're here. So the first step is just to find and review that item type consolidation information packet that Crystal just displayed. So you take a look at that, just give it a read. Then in that same item type consolidation folder, you will find a folder for each of your libraries. And in each folder, if we can pull one up, Crystal.
Sure.
Thanks. I like that we're consistently picking on ALSIP today.
I know, I'm sorry.
Hey, fun fact, I used to work there many years ago, so I'm sure Sandra knows to expect it.
All right, so within your folder, you have this.
Exactly, you will have an Excel document. Each document has 3 sheets down at the bottom. So the first one is a count items by item type report. So this is a count of every item type your library uses, this and the number of items there. And then in the next sheet, you'll find your library specific circulation map. So even though you could go to the SWAN support site and pull up the giant map that Crystal displayed earlier, we've sectioned out your lines for you so you don't have to take that step. And then in sheet 3, we have the hold map, which again, we've pulled out just your library specific lines. And some of the formatting might be a little wonky in the browser, but all the data is there.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've found that Excel spreadsheet, if we could go back to that homework document, please.
Sure, give me one second.
It's fun. It's teamwork. It's like being in the same room.
I know, right? All right, there you go.
Okay. So we're going to ask you to do a few things, none of which should take you a ton of time. But you'll find that document and review the count items by item type report output that we just displayed. So think of a few different things. You want to identify any item types that maybe have low counts at your library. So if you see anything where there are only 2 items, sometimes this is the nature of the collection. Maybe it's an ebook reader or something where you've only bought 2 Kindles and there's no need to purchase more, or you don't have the funds to do so. So that might be perfectly valid, but sometimes when we see a low count, that means that these are items that are old and maybe they're missing or something like that. So it's always a good idea to take a look at what those items actually are. And you can do that by running a Blue Cloud Analytics report and actually identifying list items by home location or item type, for example. And you can find what that item is, where it is, and see if it's possibly something that you could clean up. The next step would be to identify any items in the list that you already know you don't use. And you might want to investigate to see if these were assigned in error. So sometimes you have something in your drop-down menu, an item type that you don't use, and staff are just accidentally applying it. I mean, that kind of thing happens all the time. We're all human. So if you see anything surprising in that count items by item type report, feel free to identify and clean it up. And then, are there any other item types on the list that you think could potentially be consolidated at your library? Sometimes you already have an idea of something that you've been talking about, but you just haven't had time to look at this project, or maybe there's someone in the library that isn't interested, and so you haven't been able to. But just take a look and identify and analyze which item types you're using. Then step 4, keeping that item type consolidation information packet that we showed you in mind. We want you to specifically analyze how video and audio item types are circulating in your library and anticipate some problems that you might face. So for example, I just have a few things here. Do Blu-rays and DVDs circulate differently in your library? For example, do Blu-rays circulate for 7 days, but you've moved to circulating DVDs for 3 weeks? That's something you might want to make note of, keeping in mind those goals that were stepped out in that information packet. Similarly, what about adult and juvenile item types? Do those circulate differently? Because you'll notice that we're stripping that out of the item type wherever possible. So that would be another thing that might impact your library. So it would be good to take note of that. And then, are there any circulation or holdability conflicts you identify that would prevent your library from moving forward? So in order to determine that, that's why we have your circulation and hold map lines pasted in that document. So you can actually take a look and see. And as you're doing that, I mentioned earlier, Crystal, do you mind going back to the ALSIP item type analysis document in the tab right before? The Excel spread, yeah, thank you. So we mentioned before that the circulation map contains a lot of different item types. And so you might see some that you aren't using. For example, in line 2 right there, ALSIP is not using the item type of audio. It was not in their count items by item type report. It is in their circulation map. This isn't a mistake. This is done so items in interlibrary loan from libraries that are using that item type circulate correctly. Because if it wasn't there, as we said before, it would have circulated for 3 weeks as opposed to 2. So you should always expect to see item types in your circulation map that you don't use. And this is fine and this is correct. But in sheet 3, in the hold map, if you remember what we said, these are items, the hold map is restricting items that are owned by your library only. So you can expect to only see items in this map that you actually, item types in this map that you actually use. So if you see something, so for example, if ALSIP were looking, and I don't know that this is true, but if they were looking at their count items report and saw, I don't have any under Kit J, I don't think I use Kit J, but this is still in my hold map. This would be a good thing to identify that we could remove those lines for you. That'd be something else to look at. And then if you could please go back to that item type review homework document. Thank you. Okay, and then I think we're on to Yeah, we're into step 5. So we want you to just take note of any questions or concerns you may have. For example, is your library interested in consolidation? And you might not have any circulation or holdability concerns, but you have other concerns. For example, do you report to your board how Blu-rays and DVDs circulate differently? So is collapsing that down to a video item type of concern for you? Because you're worried about losing your statistics. I know we have at least one library in the room that I've met with that has this concern. So just take note of that. We want you to just think about things. This is a goal for the year, but this isn't something that's a requirement. This isn't something we're saying you need to move to tomorrow. But we want your input and we want you to analyze how things circulate so we can move as many of you forward as possible. So that's the homework. Down at the bottom, it says you may take notes however you like. Some of you might prefer to open a new Word document. You can take notes directly in that Excel spreadsheet. Whatever works best for you is perfectly fine, but just make sure you put it in that library folder under that documents item type consolidation in the SharePoint portal. As long as it's there, then we'll be able to find it. And because this is a goal throughout the year, we're just asking that you complete this by March. So after the March meeting, we're going to be scheduling meetings with each of you to chat about the homework, to chat about your item types in particular, to do a more in-depth consultation. So we just want to have you get familiar with how circ and hold maps work, get familiar with your item types, begin thinking about the idea, and then we'll move on from there. Did I forget anything, Crystal?
No, I just want to note that, we do understand that some of you all might not be the decision makers for this type of thing on what discussing what item types. Some of you are, some of you run both of those departments. So if you may need to call in a few other people in your library, and that's totally fine. We know that when Sam does these consultations, it's usually with circulation and someone from tech or cataloging. And sometimes that's, one person or 5 people. It really all just depends on, the setup your library has. So, while we're working across advisory groups, and bringing things like this in that started in bibliographic services and bringing it to CERC and kind of expanding that and having that cooperative relationship amongst our groups, we're looking for that as well. You might have to look for that as well in your library and kind of, all work together and see what's going to work for you all in the long run. Does anyone...
And I'll even take it a step further. And I know some of you, in order to change item types, you might even need to consult your board. So it is, as everything, a little bit of a mixed bag, but this can get the conversation started. Victoria, to clarify, have the Blu-rays been switched to video yet? For your library specifically? Or are you asking if those item types already exist? You can feel free to unmute too, if that's easier.
Yeah.
The second thing you said.
The second thing I said. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so that information packet is not yet live on the support site, but will be soon. But all of the information in it is accurate and is true to those item types already exist. I'm sorry, words just got hard. But yes, all of those item types already existed. So if you were a library that said, hey, I make all the decisions in my library, I'm going to do this homework, and I want to call you tomorrow to move to using this model, you could. I don't anticipate that any of you might, but you could. And I didn't give you a heads up, Lucas, but you are the only one actually in this group that is using these item types. So I know this homework's a little different from you, but feel free to take note of your item types anyway and just give this a look over. There might be something else you think you maybe could consolidate.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay, any...
Dawn is asking, and that's, yeah. Lucas, so how did this process work for you?
Yeah, so I had a meeting with Sam and Vicky, and we went through my hold map, my circ map, and kind of really found outliers and suggestions for consolidation. I voiced my concerns. I was one of the people who people still wanted specific sets for Blu-rays versus DVDs at least annually. So still have to work with Sam to figure that out as well. But it was very straightforward. It was amazing. We were able to figure out all of these item types that we are no longer using. We also were able to, if you work within tech at all, the drop down for item types, it lists many that we did not use. And so we were able to turn a lot of those off, which further streamlines processing in workflows and setting up those item records. So I feel like while we had a specific intention for the consultation, the amount of cleanup kind of spilled over to other arenas and was really useful. So I'd highly recommend it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's one of the strengths that I see and appreciate most about these one-on-one consultations. It's that, just like Lucas said, you can start with an idea of what you want to accomplish, and a lot of times you will go over that intention. And so you will get more out of it than you thought you might have.
Yeah, great. Anyone else have any questions? If you are not on the advisory group and this is all new and sounds like something you want to start as well or are interested in, please feel free to reach out. You can do that through a ticket, and Sam is kind of the spearhead for this. She would get in contact with you as well. So, sorry, Sam, just probably gave you a lot more work, but.
No, that's always good. No, I love these consultations, and I think I've gotten asked before too, if I submit a request, does that mean I'm sort of making a commitment to something? And the answer is no. This is really just to help you learn more, so you can get out of it what you want to get out of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, I was literally just asking that in the chat. Do you have to commit to changing if you want a consultation?
Yeah. Thanks for reading my mind, Vicky, but I got there first.
All right. Okay, if there aren't any other questions from anyone, we can go on to just kind of giving a little update, and kind of bringing something to your attention if you haven't heard. Okay, we had a brainstorming meeting about patron management and student cards. This was driven by this new Illinois registry, like additions and changes. We had a few attendees here from the Circulation Advisory Group attend this meeting. It was myself, Dawn, Aaron, and Stephanie and Jerry who are here, and then we had the director from Blue Island there. And we did make some notes and kind of talk over what, some of these changes and how we could assist with them. So if you are not familiar, I have linked in the agenda to just to these. I'm not sure if Dawn or Aaron, or if you're here, if you can speak to it, if these are approved or if this is something that is going to change in the coming future.
Hey, Crystal, it's Dawn.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they are yet approved, but whenever the Illinois legislature gets together and reviews these code changes, they will be approved. And
Okay.
I'm not sure if that has happened yet or not. They're really minor wording changes and some additional clauses, but there's been a lot of talk if you've participated in the Rails update sessions where the Illinois State Library has talked about some of these administrative code changes regarding non-resident. So we just wanted to be prepared what that means for our libraries in adopting and supporting these code changes. So after we reviewed, we brainstormed, there's really not a lot that we have to do from the system standpoint, but we think it would be really helpful if we provided just some action items and clarity for all of you when you're registering these cards for kids, disabled veterans, what that really means in the processing. So we first zeroed in on the three big changes in the code. So yeah, Crystal's moving down there to section 3050, and Stephanie and Jerry jump in at any time since you were instrumental in this discussion. So the recommendation 3050.45, e-resources to non-residents. What's really important to understand is that the Public Library Board of Trustees may annually take action to offer non-residents access to e-resources free of charge. Almost all of our SWAN libraries either don't have an unserved area within their geographic area, or they are already issuing non-resident cards, being the closest public library to that unserved area. And if you issue non-resident cards for a fee, your non-residents do have access to all of those resources. So this kind of e-resources to non-residents free of charge clause is really saying that if your library wants to extend kind of a free digital use only card, that is allowed under the law. But just keep in mind that if you're already offering non-resident cards for a fee, you've now got a different model. So it is certainly something your board does not have to approve to do, but it's available if you want to. And if you do decide your board wants to do that, then we would have a single user profile that's used throughout SWAN called non-res dig, which would have hold and checkout limits, a 1-year expiration date, and it would have access to databases. Now, where it gets tricky and our challenge that we will have to investigate if we have any libraries that decide they do want to offer this free e-resources for non-residents, we would have to figure out, you would make the distinction of what e-resources really mean, because examples include but are not limited to databases. So, and downloadable audio and video. So it could mean your ebooks. And that has a whole different implication. So we would have to examine that a little further. But there would be no automatic method of registering these patrons because you would have to validate that they are truly non-residents and your library, and that your library has agreed, your board, to allow these free digital use cards for non-residents. And in our just little brainstorming, and Jerry, Stephanie jump in, we pretty much, the group that was discussing all of this kind of said, well, our boards are probably not going to allow this because we already have an avenue for non-residents to pay for a card and they automatically get all of the resources that we provide our tax-paying public. I don't think Jerry or oh, good. Stephanie's jumping in.
I think another piece that we had discussed is even if a library did want to offer the free non-resident cards, free e-cards to non-residents, a lot of the licensing for e-resources is based off of the town's population. And I think that that would get pretty messy trying to determine, what the pool is then of potential users for those e-resources and then relicensing, I think that would be extremely difficult for a lot of libraries. So that was just another consideration that we talked about.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. So again, since the administrative code, this is going to be adopted into law that a public library may use it. You don't have to. We just have to be prepared if a library does decide they want to do this, how to implement it. So that was what our policy recommendations kind of covered. And then there were two other areas about the non-resident kind of fee formula and being impacted for some special populations. So 3050.60 just says that if you have a veteran with a service-connected disability of at least 70%, those veterans are tax exempt from property taxes, and so they would not be charged a non-resident fee. So since we all pretty much have non-resident cards now, we would continue to just use your current non-resident card, not collect a fee for that population, and just use a user category 3 of a patron type veteran, no fee. And we've had a lot of talk also about the Cards for Kids program, 3050.75. And again, there's two qualifications of that. The student's principal residence is not within a public library service area, so they are in essence a non-resident. They need to follow the non-resident closest public library to apply for that non-resident card. And if they are eligible to receive the free or reduced price lunches, then they are eligible for a non-resident card without a fee at your library. And again, similar to the veterans, you'd process them after you verify all of their, where they live, what their closest public library is, and if they're eligible for the school lunch program. And if both of those are true, then you can issue that non-resident card, not collect a fee, and make it a patron type of Cards for Kids. So we'll be able to easily pull out this information in analytics. So as you have to report this to the Illinois State Library, we would have a consistent way of doing that.
Aaron, thank you. He put something in the chat, some Rails information on the proposed rules. Again, this isn't necessarily anything we're saying you have to do. We're just bringing it to your attention and just trying to get prepared to be able to offer some recommendations and make sure we can get these cards up and running if that is something that you and your board decide to move forward on.
And you do have to abide by the non-resident fee formula exemptions. If you offer non-resident cards, then the veteran and the Cards for Kids exemptions have to be supported by your library.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Were there any other questions on this? Thank you, Dawn. Jerry or Stephanie? Okay, seems quiet. So that was kind of the last thing that we wanted to bring up. And if I'm going to open it up for the advisory group to give us their questions or comments. So if you have any thoughts, and Victoria did tell me the Wednesday, it's March 18th, is incorrect. It's actually March 17th. Pardon my typo. I'll get that fixed and put this back up on the website with the proper date. But the links there should be good to go, so you can register for the next meeting. Okay. Advisory group, got any questions, comments, anything about the portal or homework or circulation map, hold map?
Or anything else you just wanted to bring up today was burning in your mind?
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I suddenly, and maybe because we were closed, I missed out on a communication, but I suddenly noticed that there was like maybe 5 to 10 emails about like no email reports that just got sent out.
No email reports?
It was
like notifications to patrons?
It was, let me pull it up. There was a few, hold pickup notice, no email address, overdue notice, no email address. And it was just a bunch of those. And there were reports that included like all the libraries.
Yeah, Victoria, this was related to the SVA issue. Our auto dialer was down on Friday and Saturday. So just to clarify, those emails that went out, those were reports that contained, they were patrons that had a phone number but no email address. So basically we had no way of reaching them because they didn't have an email address over the weekend. That's all resolved now. SVA is back up and running. So we're in good shape.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we were closed last week, the second half, so I kind of missed all of that.
No problem.
Thank you, Stephen. Anyone else have any other questions or want to bring anything up or? Okay, if you guys don't have anything else, we can end the meeting early. You can guys get started on your homework. Sam and I are available for questions. If you have any, feel free to email us or email back that SWAN group, the SWAN Circ Advisory Group, and we can, get the answers out to you. So yeah, also Erin just put in our known issue from the SVA outage in the chat. So if Victoria, if you needed to follow up with anything or you wanted to just take a look at what happened while you guys were closed, the link is in the chat for you. Okay, well, we will definitely be hearing from us. Please keep a lookout for those emails. Make sure you are following the SharePoint page in Outlook so that you can make sure you're seeing all those emails and stuff. Yeah, if you have any other questions, you know where to find us. We're always just one ticket away. So we can stop the recording, Dawn.